Hey guys, Happy New Year. It is 2017. My voice is a little rough. I just woke up. I figured there was a video I wanted to do, and the house is nice and quiet right now, so I thought I would do that. I was asked about the Nib Upgrades that I offer on the fountain pens, and why they would even be necessary, so I thought I would go into that. First of all, what is a nib? Right? Most people don't even think about it. All pens have a nib. The tip of the pen is your nib, and on a roller ball or a ballpoint, that's obviously going to be the ball of the refill, so you don't really think about it. On a fountain pen, that's a nib. So that is that's an IPG nib that I removed in number 6, and I pulled that off of an El Grande fountain pen because a customer requested an upgrade. But that's what it is. It's a piece of metal. There's a slit down the middle here, and the nib tines are on either side of that slit, and the ink is drawn down that slit to the tip, and that's what you're writing with. Now, why do I offer nib upgrades? Well, this nib is an IPG nib, which means it says Iridium Point Germany on it. And what that means, as I've said in other videos, what that means is that the iridium point came from Germany. So that tiny little point touching the paper is German. The rest of the nib is probably Chinese or Malaysian or God knows where. Now, that means, in my experience, that means that the quality of the nib is in question. That doesn't mean it's bad. It could be good, it could be bad, it could require significant adjustment to write properly. I've had some of them where, honestly, I wrote with them and they were just fine. They didn't need any adjustment at all. And I've had others that were bent so badly that it looked like someone walked on them. So, if you want a little more consistency, or, well, for one thing, this is also a medium nib, which means that the tip is closer to 0.7 millimeter or 1 millimeter, so you're going to end up with a thicker line. If you want a finer line, at the moment I offer nib upgrades that are in the medium fine to fine, and some people really do want that, especially if they're going to be writing on typical North American paper, as opposed to this Rhodia dot pad. If you're writing on Clairefontaine or Rhodia paper, then you're fine. But if you're writing on, say, Moleskine, I've had pens with medium nibs where, well, honestly, I've had roller balls bleed right through the paper on Moleskine because the paper is simply not that good. It's hit and miss as far as the pen and the ink type on the paper. My first fountain pen was a Pilot Prera with a fine nib, so I could write on anything because the line just wasn't putting down enough ink to soak through just about anything. But once I started moving up to medium nibs and wetter inks, and I started going right through Moleskine, even Leuchtturm, I went right through it. So I tend to use Clairefontaine for everything I can now. So the reason you'd want to upgrade is really just a little more consistency. And the upgrades that I offer, let me just pull them out here. So I don't present anything to a customer that I haven't tested myself, because that just scares me. So I have, for the 3 nib types I offer as an upgrade, I have them myself, in pens I've made for myself. So these 3 pens, for example, that's one of the first El Grandes that I made in zebra wood. And this Baron, which is in Bubinga, and that's a Sedona pen in Silver Fury acrylic. And each one of them has one of my nib upgrades. So the El Grande takes number 6. And it's a big boy. Now, thanks to Goulet pens, I have an upgrade for this one, which is actually, actually, you know what? That's not one of my upgrades. That's a Goulet nib, because I was playing around with that. I have the Noodler's Medium Fine I actually have installed on a different one. But if you wanted to buy one of my pens and take the stock nib and then buy a Goulet nib and throw that on there, they work beautifully. That's a number 6, and it writes really well. The medium fine from Noodler's that I'm offering, I actually threw onto this crazy guy. This is a Schrade tactical pen, because Lord knows when the zombie apocalypse hits, you're going to need a pen, right? Wonder if I can kill a zombie with this. Well, one of my other hobbies is archery, by the way, so I guess I'm prepared, because everyone seems to kill zombies with arrows for some reason. I haven't a clue why. I'd use a gun. Anyway. I didn't like the IPG nib that came with the Schrade tactical pen, so I threw on a Noodler's Medium Fine, which is how I discovered that nib. That's it there, and it writes beautifully. That is the upgrade that I'm currently offering on the El Grande pens. And thanks to Goulet pens, it's actually quite cheap. I think I'm only charging $5 Canadian for the upgrade. Okay, so that's it there. It writes very nicely. I'm going to put that away. Now the others, on the Baron, actually I'll do the Sedona first because it's the cheaper upgrade. Now, that's my Silver Fury. For the number 5 nibs, it was a little bit tougher to find the available upgrades for it. So they're a little more expensive. Now, initially, I went right to Franklin Christoph, and every one of their nibs is $20 American. So, given the exchange rate right now and the shipping, no, not shipping, because I ordered 4 at a time, and they offer free shipping on an order that size. Just the exchange rate. It ended up, I think, at $28, $29 Canadian, because our dollar is a little pathetic at the moment. So right now, it's about $29 for a Franklin Christoph upgrade, because that's what they cost me. I do not mark up these nibs at all, by the way. They're just at cost. I make no money on them at all. I just want to offer the upgrade in case you personally don't know how to do it yourself. Obviously, once you buy the pen, it's yours, and you're free to change the nib however you want. But if you want me to install it, this is what I currently have. So, after the Franklin-Christoph nibs and looking at the cost of them, I started looking for cheaper alternatives, and a couple of years ago my lovely wife bought me a handmade fountain pen, which I had not been making them at the time, and it came with one of these nibs, and it writes very well, and it has a logo of a pen and an inkwell on it, and I was trying to figure out who makes those. So I went to the Fountain Pen Network and I asked, and someone responded and said that's a Heritage nib, and that's what this is. This is a Heritage nib. I ordered them in the US, and they're much cheaper. I think they were only about $6, and they write quite well once they're adjusted. They're actually semi-flex, I believe, so I've got to be a little bit careful as I'm adjusting them because they bend far easier than the other stainless steel nibs that I'm used to. But that's a Heritage nib. Writes very nicely. I have found a little bit of baby's bottom on this I've had to take off. But overall it's writing very well. And the other one I offer on my Baron here, that's a Baron in Bubinga, CA glue finish. That's where all that nice shine comes from. Getting better at doing those. I really like the Baron kit overall. It's inexpensive and there's more metal in it than, say, plastic. And when you look at a lot of the finer kits, they all kind of look like variations on this one. I will eventually do some of those, but some of the more expensive kits simply have rare materials, so they're using real rhodium and gold, for example, which is why the kit might cost $60 just for the kit. The Baron kits are, fit the hand very well. They're a good size, and they look quite nice. This one is even in copper accents, and I love the color of copper. The copper and Bubinga looks really nice together. And on this guy, I threw on a Franklin-Christoph, and that's a Franklin-Christoph Fine number 5, and that's one of the best writers that I have. Franklin-Christoph does do a very nice job. They're not cheap. They cost $20 American. If you wanted a gold nib, Franklin-Christoph charges $100 American. And I believe on an order of that cost, there's free shipping to me, so it would be straight $100 American. And once it arrived, I'd install it, and I would not mark that up at all. So that hasn't come up yet. It's also not an option on my Etsy site at the moment. But if you did put in a custom order, I could do that for you. Or you can buy one yourself and you can install it. Okay? And if you're curious about removing these nibs and doing it yourself, it's really not all that hard. I'm not going to do that with these because I've got them adjusted and writing just right, and I don't want to mess with them. So I could pull the nib off of another pen, and they're all basically the same. Let's see here. I'm just going to grab one. Alright, so here's an El Grande in Paduke. That one turned out nice. The Paduke is a nice orange color. I actually have one where there's a bit of a cream color was on the end of the wood. I should pull that out. But right now, this is the El Grande. It takes a number 6. Screw caps on these kits. Okay, and that's the IPG nib. So if you want to remove that, well, open her up. You take out the converter. Okay, so you've got the section here is plastic. And there's the feed. Now on the bearings, what you do is hold from here and you twist. And when you twist this way, you actually unscrew the section, and there is a sleeve around the feed and the nib on the bearing. So it's one extra step. You're going to unscrew the metal here. On the El Grande, the section is holding the feed and the nib. Now they're just friction fit, so there's nothing special to do but to pull. So what you commonly do is grab some material that is quite grippy. If you want to get it cheap, then get a pad, one of the under pads to hold a rug in place, and you can cut pieces off that are sized for your hands for years before they wear out. That stuff lasts forever. I suspect I can just pull this. So if you just pull, now you don't want to damage anything. So what I do is I lay my finger under the feed here and I grab the top of the nib, and that's fairly safe with these. It's not a fragile feed like you find on there's some fountain pens where the feed is very fragile, and you don't want to do it this way. But just grab and pull, and it will move, assuming that your fingers are awake. Here you go. And there's the nib and feed, and they're just lying on each other. Okay, that's your plastic feed. No, it's not an ebonite feed, I'm sorry. Not with these kits. Over time, I will probably move up to better materials, but this is what I'm working with right now. Okay, and that's your nib. It's a slip of stainless steel that has been pressed on top of a mold into this shape. And breather hole was cut primarily as a reference for cutting the line down the middle. If you want to see how that's done, there's some nice making of videos on YouTube. Look for how it's made in fountain pens. And, it's kind of interesting if you're a complete geek like me. I actually find that interesting. Anyway, you take your new nib from there, and you're just going to see where the feed is. So we'll roll the feed upside down and the nib upside down and lie them together, and you want to basically align the shoulders of the two. So you can sort of push that up and feel where the feed touches your fingers and it's aligned with the shoulders on the nib. You also want to get it centered. So what I do is I hold it from there, and the second I grab it I can feel it shift. So it's already off center. So when I go to push it back into the section, I don't push it in all the way. And of course I drop the section on the floor. Alright, take two. Of course it rolled as far away as humanly possible. So there's a nib and feed. You hold that. Now, if you look in the front of the section, there's actually a flat piece of plastic right there that prevents the feed from going in any other way. So you have to be careful when you put it back in. So I'd start to put it in and then turn it until suddenly the resistance disappears. And then start to push it in just a little bit to about there, and then don't do the rest. And examine it and get that feed centered. it wouldn't hurt if you actually use a loop and look in that hole to see if it's aligned with the feed lines underneath, because you want everything aligned. But that looks reasonable. Okay, and then just squeeze and push it in the rest of the way. Don't kill it. Once you start meeting a great deal of resistance, it's plenty secure. And you know, that's it. It's not really rocket surgery. As long as it's in far enough that it will meet the ink coming out of your converter. You put that back on, and this is the core of the pen that does all of your writing. And the rest is for looks and for the handhold, obviously, because this wouldn't, you know, writing with this isn't going to feel very good. Well, you know, at least there's a decent handhold here, so you could write with this, but it would look a little odd. And besides, I did all that work to, you know, turn that Paducah wood, so I think you want to actually use it. So we put that back on, and there's your pen. Okay, so just about any number 6 nib will do. In case you're curious, by the way, the number 6 comes from the distance across the nib between the shoulders in millimeters. So if you're not sure what you have, just measure. Okay, not too bad. And if you're not sure about doing that yourself and adjusting it and making sure that it writes properly, that Nib Upgrade service and making sure it writes properly is part of the cost of what I'm offering. Okay, so when you select a more expensive nib, I don't charge anything for doing the actual installation. The only thing I charge for is if you convert from a fountain pen to a roller ball or vice versa. And the only reason I charge for that, I charge like $5. I charge for that because I have to go and buy a kit for that pen that's like maybe $12. And I'm going to have to take pieces out of it to convert. So there is a small cost to me in doing that. So I don't charge for the entire kit, I charge a small amount just to convert between the two. But you're not going to convert a fountain pen to a roller ball anyway, right? Because that would just be wrong. I offer it anyway because, you know, I like selling things. But regardless, I'd recommend that if it's a fountain pen, you keep it that way. And any of my roller balls, of course, when you're looking at the roller balls, you can convert them to a fountain pen because it's using the same kit. So if you look at the roller balls, you'll see in the pull downs there are options to convert them. And if I've messed that up in some way, if that option is not available, just contact me, let me know. If there's one of my roller balls that you'd really like to have as a fountain pen, and the option is not there, just let me know. Okay. So that covers some of the different nib types and why I do upgrades and how they're done. So I hope this helps. As always, if you have any questions, just let me know. And happy 2017.